Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the Living History of COF. Living History seeks to share the real lived experiences of members of COF worldwide. My name is Michelle Lorimer. I live in Murrieta, California, United States. It is a pleasure to be with you today and to help introduce our guests, Jeanne Weiler and Mary Hoeppner, two members of the COF community in Wildomar, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tomas Lopez, joining Michelle in hosting the event today. I live in Los Angeles, California, the United States. Thank you so much for being with us. If you are not familiar with COF, briefly, it is a path of spiritual unfolding, of expansion of love and consciousness, and cultivation of inner freedom. It began its activities in 1937 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and later expanded to other countries, eventually to California in the United States. Living History is a monthly interview series developed by a group of volunteer members of COF from various countries. Interviews have been conducted in Spanish, Portuguese, and English. The idea sprang from a July 2019 interview of Alicia Brogno and Dora Holzer. After that, there was great interest to continue sharing the journeys of people who in their daily lives resonate with the path of COF.
Living History is not simply the recording of big biographies, but primarily the sharing of personal stories and the daily experiences which have nurtured the ideas and reflections of the interviewees. It is one of the ways we are able to connect with the vast diversity of languages, cultures, experiences, and ideas found in the broad community of COF. Before we begin the interview, I would like to mention a few things. Your microphones will be muted at this time. At the end of the program, we will activate them so that we can greet one another. This program will be recorded. During the interview, please use the Zoom chat for sending your comments, messages, and questions to the interviewees. We will gather all the messages you have written and create a virtual gift for our interviewees.
During the interview, a link to a feedback form will be posted in the chat. Please take a moment to click on it, and after the interview, kindly send us your comments and suggestions. The volunteers of Living History appreciate the guidance received in the feedback. Upon responding, you will receive a link to access a special photo of this event. We will now hand the microphone over to today's interviewers, Bonnie Fishman from Boston, Massachusetts, and Lynn Troncale from New York City.
Greetings, everyone. It's so nice to see your beautiful faces. I'm very happy to have all of us together today for this wonderful event. In preparation for this interview, Lynn and I met with Jeanne and Mary. And I was moved by the story they told of developing community, both inner and out from a both inner and outer perspective. They made it clear that working in community was not always easy, just like life outside of community is not always easy. Today, we look forward to eliciting more of their experiences.
Thank you, Bonnie. And thank you, Thomas and Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and to explore what it has meant to Jeanne and Mary to develop community. So Jeanne and Mary, we're going to get started. In these Living History interviews, we like to ask each person a little bit about their personal journey an encounter with cough, and in this case, how you decided to enter the community. Jeanne, can we begin with you? Could you tell us a little of your story?
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in the Midwest of the United States. And after going to college, I grabbed a friend of mine from the class and I said, let's go to New York City. I just couldn't wait to go. And she said, okay. So we got a job in a rehab center, and because both of us were physical therapists, and we went and lived there. Well, at that point, then we met Tomas Agustin. He was 15 years old. And he really inspired me a lot. Not only every time you talked to him, it felt like you were the most important thing. And he never brought up the fact that he was an amputee. He also brought up a lot of the ideas of cough. And for me, it seemed like came naturally because he seemed to live them in his life. And so I went, I love the ideas. He even talked to me about, you're supposed to renounce to yourself. And I said, oh, that's interesting. That strikes a chord in my heart. And so then after a while, he said, well, my brother is starting some groups that are meeting around these ideas. Wouldn't you like to talk to him? So I said, sure. And I went to talk to him, and he was so kind and nice. And he also expanded the ideas of cough and explained what I needed to do to join. So in 1969, I joined a group of cough. But after 6 years and a lot of different experiences, he said, well, maybe you might be interested in joining the community. I said, oh, wow, that insight, it really connected to something that was deep in me and I hadn't talked about that for a long time. Because I used to run around being a nun when I was in elementary school, and one of my heroes was Teresa of Lisieux, and and all of that. But at this point, I was a bit reluctant, even though nothing seemed to be just the right thing to do. I said, oh, this is a possibility deep inside. So I got to talk to another daughter that was in my group, and we decided to go to California and to meet the people in the community there, because I had to see something about what was going on. So then when we went, we met Joan Clark and Alicia Ramon, and it was very nice. We talked about cough, we talked about community a bit, and we just connected deeply. Both of them impressed me very much. But I wasn't ready to just say, come on, I'm going in. No, I went back and kept thinking about it. And then they told us that Madeline had joined the seminary over there in California. And I said, oh, wow, well, if there's a seminarian in there, probably I could go and be a seminarian too. So then in 1974, I went to the community in Montebello. It's close to Los Angeles and part of Los Angeles, and is within the city. And it was interesting, the inside thoughts that I had. I thought, it's really nice to work on unfolding in a group. It would be much better than just working with one person or something like that. And after going to the rehab center and then I went to Africa for a while and worked in a hospital, I saw a bit of the suffering of the world. And it came to me that really doing physical therapy and things like that was just not enough, that really working on myself would be, might help a lot more. and to learn to love from the inside instead of asking for it on the outside. And so I also was sort of a person who lived on the surface and didn't understand people so much. And I did want to learn more about life. And I figured this would be a good opportunity to practice and also to stay focused, which was a good idea in my view.
Thank you, Jeanne. It's interesting to hear your evolution from a little bit of uncertainty about going into the community and really thinking about it and overcoming the draw of New York City and going out to California and joining the community. Thank you. So Mary, we would like to hear a little bit about your young life as well and what brought you to COF and your path to community.
Well, I grew up in Queens, New York. And as a teenager, I had been, I guess what you could call a seeker. I always wondered what my life was about, what was the purpose. Not an easy thing for a teenager to think about. The usual scenarios I saw before me didn't seem to answer those questions. I tried to talk to my friends about them, these ideas, and they didn't resonate with these ideas at all. So I learned quickly to sort of push those ideas, the feelings, the question I had into deep within me, and I just carried it. But I didn't see any answers around me. I went ahead and went to nursing school at Bellevue, which is a big city hospital in New York City that services the poor. Working there, of course, the suffering of the city of the poor in the city became very close. And the questions within me became more pressing. But I still didn't seem to have any answers, even though I had my radar open and was sort of seeking still. A few years later, I got a job as a nurse in a community college. And this was in New York also. And one day when I'm in the office, one of the instructors comes in. Someone I don't know, she doesn't know me, that's Judy Gomez. She comes in and she invites me for lunch. So I said, sure, let's go for lunch. We grab our brown bags and we go for lunch. Well, it wasn't long into the conversation that Judy starts talking about COF, the ideas of COF. I just couldn't believe it because it really was the first time in my life that I had spoken to somebody that directly related to what I felt inside. So as we were talking, she said, do you have any, what do you think of what I'm saying? And I almost had chuckled inside and I said, of course I understand what you're saying. So we had, of course, lunch a few more times, and she invited me to meet Manuel Agustin, who was the delegate of the table in New York, but he lived in Brooklyn.
Mary,
Yes,
I just want to interrupt. Isn't it amazing that we, for some reason, met these two people, Tomás Agustín and Judy Gomez, and they were able to inspire our inner yearnings for some reason.
Yes,
Where did that come from? Where did they come from?
Yeah, it's really something I've pondered a number of times. And because we didn't know each other, Judy and I mean, she just reached out in friendship. And just that little encounter changed the whole trajectory of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it is one of those mysteries that I'm incredibly grateful for. but it also shows me the power of what it means to reach out, even when you don't know somebody.
That's
You have no idea. Anyway, she, again, when she invited me to go to Brooklyn, now Brooklyn's far. At that point in time, to go by subway to Brooklyn from Queens was a long trip. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to make it to Brooklyn to meet this person. So again, Judy reached out in friendship and she offered to drive me, which she did. And when I met Manuel, of course, he spoke about meditation and about meetings and a vow. Well, none of these things were familiar to me. So I said, Anyway, but again, the ideas he had and expressed so resonated within me that I said, I've got to do this. So I went ahead and took the vow and entered COF, and learned that the method definitely allowed me to access what I was feeling inside and allowed me to learn how to live it, actually live it. Nobody else was going to tell me. I had to learn. I had to find it in myself. And after a few number of years, of course, another question comes. And Manuel says, well, maybe you should think about community. Now, at that time in New York, I didn't know anything about community. We never saw the community. Anyway, I went on retreat, my first retreat, to the Community of Wildomar. So I got to see it physically. And I also got to speak with Alicia Ramon, who was the delegate and who guided the retreat. So at least I got some contact. And again, you can't know, for me, I couldn't know community from the outside. So, but the question kept reverberating within me. Is this what you need to do? This is, So after a year, I said, yeah, this is what I need to do. Even though I know I'm really going to discover about it once I jump into it. So a year later, I entered the community and I've been here ever since, learning about it day by day.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Jeanne. You both have a long history in the community, which has been there for over 50 years. And I know when you first arrived, it was a very rural area, and we're going to see some slides in a few minutes of those old days. But now the world has grown up around the community. And we would like to know, in the early days, I know Jeanne arrived at Montebello. So we're kind of curious as to what Montebello was like in the transition to Wildomar, and how was the community able to survive and thrive? So Jeanne, if you could tell us a little bit about the beginnings of the Wildomar community.
Sure.
Thanks.
I just want to tell anything I say is from my point of view. Others for sure have lived these experiences differently and they would emphasize different things. So this is the letting go. Then the thrust of the story is going to be to see how community developed. And we'll talk a little bit about the physical things, but also we're going to talk about the inner things, which are also extremely important. I think they go together. And just to let you know, I'm not a founder. I'm somebody that benefits from those who have the courage to found. So this is a little bit about the founders. Senor Jorge decided that it wouldn't be important to have a female community in the United States. So he chose Joan Clark and he chose Alicia Ramon. to go? Well, they were very young and they needed to get a visa. It took them a long time. They had to go through Brazil and everything. And then they finally got to California, where there was a house that Señor Jorge had found that would be able, where they could live. And that was near, like I said, in Los Angeles, Montebello, in the city. And they spent some years there developing the community, the culture of the community, with their silence, their teamwork, their prayers, their study, and their ability to adjust to the environment of the United States, learning English and making the living. They opened a daycare center in this house that they lived in. And Señor Jorge helped them a lot. And also the Farbers, Deborah and Sergio Farber, helped a lot to develop that and give them some support. Also, there was a couple of sons that had opened the Sons community in Wildomar, and they were building houses and kind of taming the land a little bit, but they were way out in Wildomar. Okay, after several years of learning all that, several daughters started coming. Okay, their first was Madeline, then there's Paulette Sink, and then there's Ellen Goldstein, and then there was Betsy Valbrack, and I came. And so the house was filling up, and more daughters came at some almost right away. And then it was a lot of people in that house. So at that time, the sons had moved out. So it was decided that Alicia and 4 of us would move to Wildomar permanently.
Jeanne, can we take
Yeah.
a minute to show the slides from the?
Oh,
that
yeah,
era?
that's a great idea.
So, Marilda, could you please?
Próxima.
Marilda, pues, si puede poner las primeras fotos.
There's Joan and Alicia preparing to come to the United States. Look how young they are. And then the next one. Next.
La próxima.
Próxima.
There. This is a picture of the house that we lived in. So there was a bit of room. It was a pretty nice house, but we still were a little bit crowded. And that picture on the side are the daughters that I mentioned that came to the seminary.
I bet people would want to know who is who.
Okay, starting on the left is Jeanne, then Betsy, then Ellen, then Madeline, and I don't see the other ones. Wait, I have to move the screen.
I think that's Paulette.
I think
It must be Paulette.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. Ellen and Paulette. Yeah.
Gracias, Marilda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we learned. Oh, then here we move.
We'll come to these later.
No, this is. Oh,
Marilda. Yeah. Okay.
okay.
I guess we'll stay here.
Leave it there. Leave it there. That's good.
Okay.
So, so then we learned to be in the community, and we adjusted to this, and we moved. This is when we moved. Yeah, we moved 4 daughters, Alicia, and 4 of us moved out to Wildomar. Then when the sons left. Okay.
So that was quite an adjustment moving to Wildomar from the house, an established house in a community. And then you went to this land that had not a whole lot on it, just a couple of houses.
Yeah.
La próxima.
And the trees, there are not too many trees. Look at the sons had planted some of the trees. They were just babies.
Se puede seguir, Marila.
Okay, so we moved for those 33 acres, and as you see, there were not too many houses around. There's horse farms and fields of oats and things like that. And here's the group. We have Joan, Alicia, Jean, Ellen, Betsy, Madeline, and Margarita came, and Paulette. Okay, so
¿Y la próxima?
we decided that we needed to support ourselves. Okay, stay here for a while. And so the first thing, oh yes, one of us was very good cooking. It was Alicia. She made all kinds of wonderful desserts. We thought we could sell them, and that was going to be how we'll make a living. Oh no, it wasn't enough, but we certainly enjoyed the tastes that we had. And then we said, well, we know something about doing things with our hands. Let's make puppets. That'd be really good. And then we could sell them. But as you see in the fields, there's probably not too many schools around that would like to get our puppets. So, okay, well, we know something about schools. Maybe that would work. So we went down to the local principal and we said, you know what, we'd like to open a daycare center. What do you think? Or a preschool? And he must have looked at the field and looked at us and said, oh, I don't think that's going to work. But that didn't dissuade us. We said, we're going to do it anyway. And that was a good idea. Thank heavens we had that courage.
Yes.
Meanwhile, other people came. It was Linda and Diana and others. And we worked, as you see, trying to develop the land. We made gardens. Look at, that's Madeline there with a fantastic thing. And we planted trees. You notice the eucalyptus in the back of the garden there? Those were planted. We did that. And then we're putting in water lines in the other picture there. And there's a fence in the back. It looks like a brand new fence. This was something else we did. Since we're going to have this preschool, we had to have a yard. So we made a fence and we built the jungle gym and the swings behind. And we started making toys for the classes. And we tried to learn a little bit about how to teach children. So that it was busy. We were quite busy.
I think there's one more photo. So la próxima.
You might think, yes, now just here's the daycare center. Well, would you like to bring your kids to someplace like that? Looks a little simple, but some people were brave enough. At any rate, you might think that we stayed in the property and got isolated a little bit in community, but that wasn't really true. I mean, although we stayed most of the time, we registered to vote, we got our driver's license, we learned to connect with the local authorities, we licensed the daycare center, we were starting a nonprofit, cough order at Wildomar, and we had to get that status through the state, and we did our banking, and we actually paid off with this little business, paid off the mortgage for the whole property that we had been given. And then in the end, we were able to build a school, a building for the school.
Well, that's pretty amazing. I mean, you were able to financially achieve the property. So how were you able to build a new school?
Well, that was really kind of like a miracle, we think, because we certainly didn't have money for it. So we received a really big donation so that we could build that building and move the daycare to the school. And that was also a learning experience, dealing with architects and contractors and making sure everything was done the way we wanted it. They probably suffered a bit. And then we learned to name it Ann Sullivan Preschool. Excuse me, it was nursery school at that time. But when you receive you tend to want to give. And well, this happened. Actually, from Wildomar, 2 other communities were founded. Senor Jorge bravely wanted to have a community in Costa Rica. So he came and he and Joan and several daughters got in a van, and with all the kinds of things that we thought they needed, got in the van and off they went from California driving to Costa Rica. That was the beginning of that community. And then a couple of years later, Senor Jorge got a house that he thought, oh, this would be good for a woman's community in New York. So once again, we got another van, filled it up with all the things that we wanted, what we thought that they might need. And he took Alicia and several other daughters all the way over to New York.
We
at
do
that
have
point-
we have a photo of that. Can we
Yes.
show it? La próxima, Marilda.
There you go, Senor Jorge and Alicia Ramon filling the van to go to New York with some daughters. And that was really brave. So now, so to speak, we were on our own, but not really. But I wanted to tell you, I thought this is such a brave thing for Senor Jorge. He could leave us on our own, but I think it was a plan, because actually all of us need to be left to our devices at some point. We're not like developing because we're being held up. We're developing because we learn how to take responsibility and responsibility for our lives. So all of this came after about 5 years of training and having a lot of help. Well, at that point, Mary and the Anne Sullivan Nursery School was started.
Boy, Jeanne, what a that's a lot of excitement. And
Yeah.
change. So, Mary, when you arrived, it was a time of transition. I mean, people had left and you had just finished building this new building. And we just would like to hear from you about what it was like joining the community and helping to develop this school.
Well, when I arrived, there was a big change in the school. It not only, it went from having 10 children to having 34. Well, it wasn't long before we realized having 34 little 3- and 4-year-olds in one large room, we better cultivate our skills. So even we started going back to college to learn how to really develop the school and serve the needs of the children. We also realized when you have a school of that scale, we had to cultivate our business skills. Fortunately, Sergio Farber joined our board and helped us develop the skills of actually running a business, because that's something we all had to learn. Now, what happened is you saw some pictures at the beginning where there was this empty field, but over the years, an amazing thing happened. Those empty fields became housing developments, all of them. It was amazing. There was always a development and houses coming up all around us. And by and large, those houses were young families with young kids. So we just were full of children all the time. The thing about running a preschool and working with little children is you get very close to the parents, because little 3- and 4-year-olds, and you get to know their challenges and their difficulties. So it became a sort of a normal evolution that as we had a lot of contact with parents, they wanted to know about COV. So we started extension activities right within the classroom. And out of the extension activities then blossomed the sponsored table of Wildomar, because there was some member who would come, wanted to know more and commit more. And there's a little story about that sponsored table, which of course still exists today and is very active. Michelle being a member, and also a mother of a child who went to our school. One of the parents in the sponsored table, now this is years ago, was a consultant. She was sharing with us her work. She was a consultant for companies and was teaching companies how to use dialogue with their staff. Well, when she shared it with us, we thought this is a really great idea. So we invited her. This was Linda, her name was Linda Turfs. Her specialty was dialogue. We invited her to do a workshop with us for the whole day. And it was wonderful. It seemed something that was really useful and practical for us. We shared this information with Senor Jorge, who was the spiritual director of COF at that time. And after that, we know what happened, that within COF, dialogue became part of our method. It became part of the reunion meeting, part of the retreats. So we're very grateful. We shared a lot with parents and they shared a lot with us. So there's a lot of richness going back and forth, and that's goes on all the time.
Mhm.
Mary, it's wonderful to hear about the growth of the school and of the interest in CAF, and how the story about dialogue is very interesting, how that came to you through one of the parents. It sounds like the group, in the community was becoming pretty established by this point, and you had your routines and your work. What were some of the challenges you faced with the diversity of each one of you? I think there were people from different countries and different languages. What can you tell us about that?
Well, actually, I think you sort of hit on it. For me, the pivotal challenge that stimulated my own unfolding, and I think stimulated the unfolding of the group, was that our group is very diverse. We're 11 women, and for my appreciation, we're very different. We each have different points of view, different ways of expressing ourselves across the board, where we each, but on top of that, not only are we each different, but we come from 4 different cultures. So we have 3 members from Argentina, 3 from Colombia, 2 from Mexico, and 3 from the United States. So you get an overlay of the original diversity, and then you get the cultural diversity. That was very soon, that became clear to me that that is a particular challenge for us as a group, as I perceived it. I realized that when people are different, there's a temptation to push away what's different or not want to interface with what's different. So I saw very clearly that it was a choice, that you either close off to what's different or do you open? Do I open and learn about myself and about them, or do I close off? And pretty much that has been a pivotal question for me on an ongoing basis that really stimulates the process of learning about myself and them and including.
So how did you do that? I mean, what are some concrete, maybe you can give a concrete example of, or a few examples of how you worked with the diversity. What was that process like?
Well, it was sort of interesting at that time in COF. Of course, I used the usual methods of meditation, reflection, prayer, and open. But at that time, about 30 years ago in COF, we were being taught other spiritual exercises, practices. And those three practices were group work, dialogue, and teamwork. Now, those three I took them as spiritual practices, encourage collaboration, are practices of collaboration. They're also practices of learning to suspend the automatic judgments that pop into your head about everything, and trying to open to different diverse points of view. So what we did as a community is we integrated those practices into our method as a regular practice. And for example, well,
Yeah, I'd like to hear what, because I know we did put this into practice, and can you
We
share
did.
some of those?
yeah, it's, for example, like in the class, we made all the jobs into teams. So, for example, I was a teacher for years, and I didn't have my classroom, that I had control over my classroom. I was a team teacher. So I had two other teachers to collaborate with. Well, that's a daily practice. And we had to decide together, plan, and problem solve together. And so that I took on as, am I going to be open or am I going to be closed? And the other, and also Jeanne and I now are both delegates. That's new. In the community, usually you have one delegate, now we have two. Well, that means, we have to, we're very different points of view, different perspectives, different ways of responding and working. Well, that means daily work, right? Jeanne, right?
Yes.
And we recognize that, and we're open to it. And that's just ongoing work. The other thing we did as a whole group, originally in the community, decisions were sort of made by a small group. Well, we changed that so that any main decision, any main planning or problem solving was done by the entire group. That meant 11 people. Well, that's 11 points of view. You can imagine what some of the meetings were like. They were very difficult at the beginning, and they continue to be difficult at times. But they are, because you have to learn. You have to learn how to work together. You have to learn how to go through hearing and learning from all the different points of view. And this is just a permanent practice that we're doing.
Well, for example, you planned to build a house together. You had to build a new house. How was that?
Yes. We not only decided together to build the house, but we decided on the shape of the windows, the tiles. I don't want to tell you, but you could say, why do that? But you know what? Now I look back on it and I realize that it was because it took a long time. It was hard to do that. But I think it brought the group together. And we all love the house. We all chose it. Like, it's like our house. It's not her house, Right. And a little point I'd say at the end is that Linda Turfs came back years later to visit us. And she said, Mary, you're not still doing dialogue, are you? And I said, of course, we're doing dialogue. We do it all the time. And she said she was really, I think, shocked. I think she was really surprised. And shared with me that she had been discouraged sometimes in her consulting when she went back to a company and saw that they didn't persevere in a practice. So I was grateful that I had this opportunity to share with Linda, because we benefited from what she gave us. And I was glad that we were able to then encourage her to go on with her work, which she continues to do today. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Jeanne, when we talked earlier preparing for the interview, you said, we didn't know anything about community. We created it as we went along. And you also commented that living in community was like a laboratory. And you said life and dialogue can be messy. Can you expand on those ideas? And what was your experience of dialogue and teamwork, as Mary has just told us her experience? Thank you.
Yeah, I would validate everything that Mary said. And I think she has kind of shown that we tried a lot of things. We experimented and we worked at it a lot, making a lot of mistakes, but it was an investigation. And like one of the things that we got to like dialogue a lot, and for many years we had a lot of ordained and solitary retreats, annual retreats in the retreat houses here. And we always had kind of a formal relationship with the members. But one year we said, come on, let's invite the ordained over to the house and we can have a dialogue. So everybody came over and we talked. And I think we all had a very, very nice time together. And I think it broke some barriers that might have been forming. And ever since, every year we would have meetings after the retreats to communicate. And I think that, as some other examples show, that the community starts to expand, that it's not just dealing with the people that you're living with, but it expands to include all the sons and daughters, all of everybody, and more, of course. The other thing I'd wanted to comment about is the experiment of the two delegates a bit. For me, there's some things that seem very useful. One is that there's more eyes seeing the thing, more perspectives looking at what's going on. And that helps because the view is more complete. Not totally complete, but it's a little bit more. And the feedback that one gets from the other delegate and from the sons and daughters, and that it becomes more apparent. And so that nobody's getting off on their own thing, kind of thing. We're really kind of working together. So it sort of flattens the hierarchy a bit as well, because of the sharing of the responsibilities. And the sharing of the jobs really helps too. So we report to each other very frequently. That's, I think, a really interesting experiment. Also, Mary was mentioning that we worked in teams, and we worked out some of our relationships. We did them in small groups before, but now we've been starting to work as a whole community with what is difficult. So members bring topics that they would like to talk about, but talk about with the group. And oftentimes there gets to be some difficult things. But what happens, at least from my point of view, is that we start to know each other a little bit more. It's not just that the delegate knows or the spiritual director or guider knows, it's everybody knows, and the vulnerabilities come out and the weaknesses come out. But in that, it's it's easier to understand the other soul instead of thinking that they're doing something wrong or something. Well, the other part about community is that we have a lot of silence in between. So if we have a very difficult conversation and we're pretty hot under the collar, so to speak, we have time to digest it, to be quiet, to pray about it, to ask ourselves about it, to think, okay, how can I look at it in a different way? And that really helps. It brings balance, I think, a balance to my life and I think to other people's lives. For instance, I've learned to suspend the judgment and listen a little bit more. As you've noticed, I tend to be someone who interrupts because I think, I've got this great pearl of wisdom that needs to be shared right now, otherwise I might forget it. And then I interrupt. It's not nice, nor do I get the other person's idea. So I've learned that really being patient, waiting, which maybe is the result of practicing dialogue, I can understand the message that comes in a little different package than the one that I would usually expect it to come in. And because of that, then the other ideas can enter me. So it really helps to expand my awareness and become more kinder. And I think all of us, I don't think that anybody here, anybody listening has not had any experience with difficulties in relationship. And you take a look at human experience from the news and all of that, and it's pretty obvious that a lot of people have problems. But what I've seen is that there's so many moving parts, living in the moment and living in a way that is coherent and everything is difficult because my mood changes, the other person's mood changes, the other situation just came up and it got in my way, and I liked things a certain way and I'm not getting them that way. And then, it's hard. You have to learn to navigate that. And that's that skill. That is really a skill that and the result, I think, of caring. Anyway, finally, I see that all of us are in situations that can make us very vulnerable and make mistakes. And all of us also are really special people in a certain way because of what we can offer. So it's not like one's high and the other one's low and I'm nothing and that person is everything. No, we're all in the same kind of boat.
It's so descriptive of your daily life, what you were just telling us, how even though you're attempting to collaborate 11 people and come to agreements, and it's not always easy, but you are making it work with the tools that you have and deepening into what it means to be human and understanding each other. So thank you both for those descriptions. We're going to bring everybody up to date a little bit with our photos. So I'm going to ask if we can show the next few slides so that people can see what Wildomar looks like now, some of the result of all of that physical work, and of course the physical work done through teamwork and the inner work that you are all doing. So once we get these photos up, I'm going to ask you both to talk about them. Let's see if we can get them back up. I think we're trying to do that. Yeah.
Sí, Marilda, la próxima.
Let's see. We're trying to. They're coming up.
Right. This is new, getting thick pictures in this living history. So we're not that good yet, but
Yes, we're not a high-tech studio.
yeah.
Let's see. Oh dear. Well, let's see. All right. Maybe we can
go ahead if you
on,
want.
and I'm going to look for the photos and try and bring them up. I think we're having technical difficulties on the other end.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bonnie. Why don't you continue?
Well, we wanted to hear about love from the two of you. It's a big word. People talk about it a lot. But I think we were thinking that the community is also a laboratory that for developing love. And so I wanted to ask both of you, how do you think about love in the community? What does it look like? And I don't know if Mary wants to start or Jeanne.
Well, I can start. I once again, I want to say that this is from my perspective, and it's not everybody's journey, but this is the journey that I've found in this area. I'm sure that, here we go. This is it. All right. There,
This is
look
physical love.
look what love brought about. These are pictures of the property now after a lot of growth and getting our friends, the trees, to come along and expand their love. Anyway, the one is from in an empty part of the property, and another is in the backyard of our house. And the ones with the tents are very interesting because we had a extension activity one time. It was a long time ago, where with the solitaries and the ordained from Los Angeles, and they brought all their families out. We had camping, the kids had fun, we did activities. And then the person that came to really start the sponsored table was convinced that we were pretty nice people, I guess, after this event. And she was one that, her name is Rowena, and she stayed and stayed and stayed as people came in and went out and came in and went. She stayed. So she's really a founder, so to speak. Mary, you want to see?
There's not another picture.
Yeah, there
Not
is.
We're
yet.
trying to advance the next picture, la
Okay.
próxima, por favor. There we go. So what are we seeing here?
Well, these are the two original houses that you saw in the earlier pictures that were didn't have any trees or anything around them. And now they're completely surrounded by greenery. And on your right, you see the eucalyptus that were tiny little things in the earlier pictures that are now really, really high and beautiful.
Let's see if we can get the next one.
Proxima.
This is a picture on the top is it's called Santa Rosa Plateau, and it's about 15 minutes from our community. And it's a beautiful place that we're able to go and hike, many, many hikes. And on the bottom, you see what is the first big school building we had. And again, it's surrounded by trees and nature blossoming all around it, which we think is really wonderful for the children. It's a very welcoming environment.
This was the building that Mary came to the retreat and took away the trash and were the first one to stay in the building.
And this is a picture of the community, the 11 members of the present community. It was a very special experience we had a few years ago, where we went on retreat to Costa Rica and had our annual retreat there. And we were also shown many of the beautiful parts of Costa Rica on that visit.
That's a nice photos. Thank you. Maybe we can try and go back to our question that Bonnie asked.
Back to love.
Back to love. Okay. So anyway, so these are some stages that I noticed in myself. First, the fulfilling of all the duties and getting them all right, and being the best as I could for all the things that needed to be done, and helping the community, but kind of looking at whether I'm doing it right, and that was my love. But it was a bit selfish, I noticed from the looking back. Then came another, like an attitudinal change. Instead of looking at the members and things as problems to be solved and to be fixed, I started to see that the differences that each one of us brought and have developed within the community, without those valuing of each individual brought a lot of appreciation. And so the things that maybe weren't done exactly the way I thought, or they weren't fixed, that doesn't matter so much anymore. So, and that goes along with another understanding that as I was able to really accept my own limitations and the vulnerabilities that I have, and what helps is to have people around you stimulate those, so they come to the fore, so you can't sleep over that. But then that also fosters an understanding of everybody, because everybody has something that they're good at and something they find very difficult. And if it finds difficult, well, why do I push on it? Let's appreciate without competing or criticizing. And the last thing that comes up is actually accepting everybody for what they are without trying to change them or fix them, which means being okay with discomfort, because my personality says, well, I don't like to wait, or I don't like to do this. They're too loud, they're too soft, they're too fast, they're too slow, they're too quiet, they're, all that. And you start to realize that that's ridiculous. You're putting a film over all of this beautiful life that you've been given to live with. So that's another expansion, I think, of love. Actually, I mean, I remember when in the beginning, I always wanted Mary, who's here, to be like me. Why isn't she doing things like me? Why isn't she like me? She's not like me.
No.
But now I see, you see, particularly, you see that she has something that is so beautiful that she brings to the community, and all of us benefit from it. And it happens with all the other members of community. They bring something so special. It's very different, but so special. And we're great. I think we're great because of it. I mean, it really has helped. That's it on love for now. Mary?
Well, I don't have too much to say. I just say, for me, love is like a mystery, and it's an ever-present part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a daily opening to, in my conversation, in my interchange with whoever I'm with, where is love here? In my daily experience, where is love here? And for the past few days, it's been with Historia Viva. Where is love here? So whatever is up, that's where the question is, no? And that's where the exploration is, and sort of trying to dig deep into whatever I'm living. And love is there somewhere, I'm sure.
Yes, indeed it is. I really appreciate your beautiful explanations of love. It's very practical, it's very down to earth, and yet it's very deep, really trying to see each other for who each person is and appreciate their gifts. So thank you for that. I am going to ask you some final thoughts because we're coming to the end of our interview time, but there is a little question that has come up before we get to that. And it's one of those future-looking questions, of course. In terms of the future of the community life. What are you seeing? Do you have aspirants, people interested in joining the community in Wildomar, or what do you think that we could do, those of us who don't live in community, like what could we do to inspire people? Both of you were inspired by somebody asking you a question. I mean, is it as basic as that? What are your thoughts on this, Jeanne or Mary?
Well, we don't know. I mean, it's similar to, I guess, anyone's life. What do you know really about the future exactly? But I can't help, I mean, I have to go back to the beginning. And so I have to go back to my experience with Judy Gomez. I mean, with that reaching out, whether it's a physical reaching out of the hand, as I felt from her, you know, to somebody I didn't know her, she didn't know me. And it's also the interior opening up to each other. So I think it's just however we open interiorly or exteriorly to connect with others. I mean, I think that's sort of what I had in mind with Historia Viva. You know, I said, I was a seeker and I had somebody I could connect with. I mean, who knows? There's a seeker out there, you know, and I didn't have an answer. I kept looking, and I often think about that, and I'm sure it's a question mark, but I certainly am deeply grateful for what I saw was a reaching out and an openness. And I hope that I can continue to cultivate that in myself with Historia Viva, with whatever, whatever opportunity comes up.
Yeah, and going along with that, I think that the development of, perhaps you didn't know very much about community life, or you didn't know that or you had questions, anybody who hasn't been that close to community members. And maybe there was some, you know, how could they do that? How can they be like that? Or, you know, it would never talk to somebody about that. You'd think they'd be throwing their life away, right? Or something like that. Maybe we were able to give you a glimpse of a little different glimpse from each of our perspectives, which would be useful, because an open attitude to community life, like Manuel Agustin, very open to community. He kept inviting people, and a lot of that that could be. And the other thing is that I was hoping that you would see that community life is not so different from anybody else's life because it's just a method. It's a method. And some people are called to that method of life. Some are called to be married. Some are called for active work or something like that. But the method is to get a sense of community inside us somehow, that we care about other people, that we're a part of humanity, that and we're not a part that wants to be separate and wants to be better or wants to be take advantage or something, but somebody who is connected and participates, because there's a lot of suffering out there, and better to try not to make it worse by the way we are anyway. And I also am very, very grateful for everything I've received. And Mary and I were talking, we're so grateful to Bonnie and Lynn and everybody, and Tomas and Michelle for helping, and everybody behind the scenes, because this is a new adventure for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeanne. Mary, did you have anything else to add?
No, it's just, it was such a learning experience, this whole Historia Viva. And deep gratitude for all of it, and to all of you, and to what you do, and you're reaching out. So thank you. And also it gave me an opportunity, I just want to share, the opportunity to do Historia Viva gave me a chance to really do a little life reflection. And I just was left with such gratitude for these countless people who have make life possible and make it possible for things to happen. They sort of show up and they disappear, and they show up and they disappear, and things keep building. So a real deep gratitude. Thank you for this experience.
And all those people that started it, wow, that's really hard. Senor Jorge, Alicia and Joan, all of those members, and also the ones before, to start the whole idea. But it develops as it goes along. Yeah.
It does.
Well, thank you both so much. I know when we first started, I told you I had this idea that you just spent most of the time praying in your room.
Right.
And now I know that your daily life is a prayer, but I do see like little halos above you.
No.
It's the white hair.
Yes.
But I'm gonna miss meeting with you, my goodness, because we've especially Lynn, Jeanne, and Mary and I have met a few times, and it's been very pleasant, and I'm gonna miss it. But thank you so much. It's been an honor to get a more realistic idea of the community and to get to know the two of you.
You too.
Well, yeah, I second that. Thank you so much, Jeanne and Mary. I really enjoyed hearing your reflections about community and the ongoing work you're doing. And it just seems that community is connected through time, from somebody reaching out till now. And it's something that we can all practice, whether we're living in a community or living in the community outside.
Yes, the larger community.
The larger community. It's alive, and we can contribute to it. So I thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure and an honor. And I thank Bonnie and all the team as well. And also Tomas and Michelle, who I'm going to turn this back over to. I thank you very much. So go ahead, Tomas and Michelle.
Jeanne and Mary, thank you so much for sharing with us your adventure in the community and the many personal experiences and insightful reflections. I've had many personal conversations with both of you. Jeanne welcomed me in and introduced me to COF when I first was with my daughter at preschool at Ann Sullivan, and with my son actually first.
Mhm.
And then Mary really welcomed me in as a member and guided me through those first beginning pieces. And feeling a little bit emotional thinking about it, but really helped me get through many hard times.
Mhm.
And I'm very grateful. And I just feel like I've grown so much from you. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'd also like to thank the spiritual director of COF, Anna Christina Flor, whose support has made this program possible. And we want to recognize all those who give their love and offering, time and energy to the living history of COF. As a reminder, the link to the form for your feedback is available in the chat. Your options, your opinions and suggestions help us a lot to improve our work. Thanks again, Mary and Jeanne, and thank you all for your presence today.
Yeah.
Thank
See you in the next interview.
Yeah.